What happens when one of country music's most beloved icons walks onto a morning show, set expecting respect, and walks off in a blaze of fury? In just 35 seconds, a single dismissive comment turned a friendly interview into the most explosive television moment of the year. The studio lights were bright that morning. Reba McEntire sat down on the familiar orange couch, her signature red hair perfectly styled, wearing an elegant blue blazer. She smiled warmly at the cameras, ready to talk about her new album and upcoming tour. Savannah Guthrie sat across from her, holding her notes, flanked by Hoda Kotb and Craig Melvin. The energy felt normal, comfortable, safe. "So Reba, welcome back," Savannah said, her voice carrying that polished morning show tone. "It's been a while since you've graced us with your presence." "Well, thank you for having me," Reba replied, her southern accent warm and genuine. "I'm excited to be here and share what I've been working on." Hoda leaned in with a bright smile. "We're so thrilled you're here. Your fans have been waiting for this new music for so long." "They sure have been patient with me," Reba laughed. "But I think they're going to love what we've created. This album is really personal, you know? It comes from a real place." Savannah glanced down at her notes, then back up with a slight smirk. "Personal? Right. So this is your, what, 30th album? 31st? 29th studio album, actually," Reba corrected politely. 29, 30. Who's counting at this point?" Savannah said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "I mean, at some point, don't you think country music has heard enough from the same voices? Aren't you worried that maybe your time has passed?" The studio went quiet. Hoda's smile froze. Craig shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Reba's expression changed, the warmth in her eyes cooling just slightly. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Reba asked, her voice steady, but with an edge. Savannah continued, seemingly oblivious to the shift in energy. "Oh, come on, you know what I mean. There are all these young artists now. Fresh faces, new sounds. Don't you ever think that maybe you should step aside and let them have their moment?" "Savannah," Hoda interjected quickly, reaching out to touch her co-host's arm. "I don't think that's what Reba—" No, let her finish," Reba said, sitting up straighter. "I want to hear exactly what she's trying to say." Craig jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "I think what we're all excited about is how you've managed to stay relevant for so many decades. That's incredible." "Relevant," Savannah repeated, emphasizing the word. "Is that what we're calling it? I mean, let's be honest here. When was the last time you had a real hit? Something that actually mattered to people under the age of 60? Reba's jaw tightened. "Savannah, I've been in this business for over 40 years. I've earned my place. I've worked harder than most people can imagine. And my fans, of all ages, seem to think I still matter quite a bit." "Sure, your fans," Savannah said, making air quotes with her fingers. "But those are people who grew up with you. They're nostalgic. That's different from being actually relevant in today's music scene." "Okay, I think we should move on," Hoda said nervously, looking between the two women. "Reba, tell us about the tour. Where are you headed first?" But Savannah wasn't done. "And honestly, can we talk about how you're still trying to dress like you're 30? The tight jeans? The rhinestones? Don't you think it's a little, I don't know, desperate?" The audience gasped. A few people in the studio crew exchanged shocked glances. Reba's face flushed, but she maintained her composure. "Desperate," Reba repeated slowly. "You think I'm desperate." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Savannah said with a shrug. "You're a grandmother, Reba. Maybe it's time to dress like one. Accept your age. There's nothing wrong with getting older." "Savannah, that's completely inappropriate," Craig said firmly, his professional demeanor cracking. "You need to apologize." "Why? For being honest?" Savannah shot back. "Someone needs to say it. This whole industry coddles celebrities and tells them they're wonderful no matter what. I'm just being real. Reba stood up slowly, carefully removing her microphone. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice remained controlled. You want to talk about being real? Let me tell you what's real. Real is showing up every single day and working for what you have. Real is treating people with respect, especially when they're your guests. Real is understanding that a woman's value doesn't disappear when she gets older. Oh, here we go, Savannah said, rolling her eyes. The feminist lecture. Savannah, stop, Hoda pleaded, standing up as well. Reba, please, she doesn't speak for all of us. Real is not tearing someone down on national television because you think it makes good TV, Reba continued, her voice rising. Real is having the grace to recognize talent and dedication when it's sitting right in front of you. Savannah leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Are you finished with your little speech? You know what? I am finished. I'm finished with this interview, finished with this disrespect, and finished sitting here pretending like this is okay. Reba picked up her purse from beside the couch. Craig stood up quickly. Reba, please don't go. We can take a break, reset, start over. There's nothing to reset, Reba said. This woman just insulted my career, my appearance, my age, and my fans. On live television, and you think a commercial break is going to fix that? I was just asking tough questions, Savannah defended herself, though her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. That's my job. No, your job is to interview people with basic human decency, Reba fired back. Your job is to make guests feel welcome, not attacked. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being cruel. Hoda stepped toward Reba, her eyes pleading. Reba, we love you. We've always loved having you here. Please don't let this ruin everything. I love you too, Hoda. And Craig, you've always been wonderful. But I will not sit here and be disrespected. I've worked too hard and too long to let anyone treat me like this. Reba turned to face Savannah directly. And you should be ashamed of yourself. You had one of the most successful women in country music history sitting on your couch. And instead of celebrating that, you tried to tear her down. I wasn't tearing you down. I was being honest, Savannah insisted, but her voice wavered. Being honest? Reba's voice rose another notch. Honest would be saying you don't personally connect with my music. Honest would be asking me how I've adapted to changes in the industry. What you did was mean-spirited and petty. A producer rushed onto the set, whispering urgently to Savannah. She waved him away impatiently. Fine, if you can't handle a little criticism, then maybe you should leave, Savannah said, her tone defensive now. Oh, I'm leaving, Reba said firmly. But not because I can't handle criticism. I've handled more criticism than you can imagine. I'm leaving because I respect myself too much to stay. Reba, please, Craig tried again, his voice sincere. Let's talk about this off camera. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out. She meant every word she said. I could see it in her eyes. Reba looked around the studio, at the crew, at the cameras, at the shocked audience members. And I want everyone watching to know something. You don't have to accept being treated badly. Not by anyone. Not even on a big fancy television show. Hoda had tears in her eyes now. You're one of my heroes, Reba. Please know that. I know, sweetheart. And you're wonderful. Don't ever let anyone change that kindness in you. Reba squeezed Hoda's hand briefly. Savannah stood up now, finally seeming to realize the gravity of what was happening. Okay, maybe I came on a little strong, but you're being overly sensitive. Overly sensitive, Reba repeated, shaking her head in disbelief. You insult me repeatedly, and when I stand up for myself, I'm being overly sensitive. That's rich. I think we should cut to commercial, Craig said urgently to someone off camera. No, Reba said loudly. Let them see this. Let everyone see what happens when someone thinks their platform gives them the right to be cruel. Savannah's face reddened. You're making a huge mistake. walking off this show? Do you know how many people would kill to be sitting where you were? Then invite them, Reba said simply. Invite someone who you'll actually treat with respect, because I'm done. You're being completely unprofessional, Savannah snapped. I'm being unprofessional? Reba's voice was incredulous. I showed up on time, prepared to promote my work, ready to have a pleasant conversation. You're the one who turned this into an ambush. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Crew members stood frozen, not knowing what to do. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment. If you walk out that door, don't expect to ever be invited back, Savannah said, her voice cold. Reba paused, turning back one last time. Savannah, honey, after today, I wouldn't come back if you begged me. And something tells me after people see how you treat your guests, you might not have a show to invite me back to anyway. Is that a threat? Savannah asked sharply. It's an observation. People aren't stupid. They see through this kind of behavior. Reba adjusted her purse on her shoulder. You know what the sad thing is? I actually used to respect you. I thought you were a professional. But what you showed me today was someone who thinks being mean makes them interesting. Hoda was openly crying now. Craig looked angry and uncomfortable. The rest of the panel sat in stunned silence. You're making a scene, Savannah said. You made the scene when you decided to attack me instead of interview me, Reba corrected. I'm just refusing to be a part of it anymore. So that's it? You're just going to storm off? Savannah challenged. I'm not storming off. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing to remove myself from a toxic situation. There's a difference. Reba's voice was calm now, resolute. And I hope any young women watching this learn something from it. Learn that you don't have to smile and take it when someone treats you badly. Learn that standing up for yourself isn't being difficult. It's being strong. Craig stood and extended his hand to Reba. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with incredible grace. Reba shook his hand warmly. Thank you, Craig. That means a lot. This is ridiculous, Savannah muttered, but she was clearly rattled now, her earlier bravado fading. What's ridiculous is that you still don't see what you did wrong, Reba said. And that's the saddest part of all of this. A senior producer finally made it to the stage, trying to whisper to Reba. She held up her hand. Whatever you're about to say, save it. My decision is made. We can edit this, the producer offered desperately. We can make it look like what? Like she didn't say those things? Like I didn't have to defend myself? Reba shook her head. No, thank you. I'd rather people see the truth. Savannah finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. Reba, look, maybe we can start over. Fresh slate. A fresh slate doesn't erase what you already painted, Reba said quietly. You showed me who you are, and I believe you. One bad. Interview and you're ready to burn bridges? Savannah asked. This isn't about one bad interview. This is about basic respect. This is about dignity. This is about not letting anyone, no matter how big their platform, make you feel small. Reba looked directly into the nearest camera. And to anyone out there who's ever been made to feel like they're too old, to this, to that, remember something. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion. Your value doesn't have an expiration date. The studio erupted in applause from the crew and audience members. Savannah's face went from red to pale. She sat back down, clearly not knowing how to respond. Well, Reba said with a slight smile, I guess that's all I have to say. Hoda rushed forward and hugged Reba tightly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Don't be sorry for someone else's behavior, Reba whispered back. You're a good person. Don't ever let this place change that. Craig also gave Reba a quick hug. You're a class act, he said quietly. Reba nodded to them both, then walked toward the exit with her head held high. Every step was measured, dignified. She didn't rush. She didn't look back at Savannah. "Cut to commercial!" someone finally yelled. But Reba was already gone, the studio doors closing behind her with a decisive click. The last image was of Savannah sitting on the couch, staring at where Reba had been, finally silent. Hoda wiped her eyes. Craig shook his head slowly. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air like smoke. In those final moments before the commercial break, you could see the realization dawning on Savannah's face. She'd pushed too far. She'd mistaken rudeness for boldness. And now, with the cameras still rolling and the crew staring at her with barely concealed judgment, she understood that this moment would define her differently than she'd intended. The bright morning show lights suddenly felt harsh. The orange couch that had seemed so cheerful minutes ago now felt like a witness stand. And somewhere, walking through the halls of that studio, with her dignity intact, Reba McEntire proved that knowing when to walk away is sometimes the strongest statement you can make. What started as a typical morning show interview had transformed into something else entirely. A moment where grace met hostility, where experience met arrogance, where a woman who'd spent decades in the spotlight showed everyone watching exactly how to handle yourself when someone tries to dim your light. The monitors around the studio showed the frozen scene. Savannah, still processing. Hoda, still emotional. Craig, still disappointed. And empty space where a legend had been sitting just moments before. The kind of empty space that speaks volumes. The kind that makes you realize what you lost only after it's gone. Producers scrambled. Crew members whispered. And in living rooms across the country, viewers sat forward in their seats, unable to believe what they just witnessed, because this wasn't scripted drama. This wasn't planned conflict for ratings. This was real, raw, and absolutely unforgettable. The commercial break couldn't come fast enough for those left on that couch, but it also couldn't erase what had happened. Some moments are too powerful to edit away. Some exits are too perfect to rewind. Some statements are too clear to misunderstand. Reba McEntire had walked onto that set as a guest. She walked off as a reminder that self-respect isn't negotiable, that being kind doesn't mean accepting cruelty, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in your own diminishment. The show would go on. The cameras would keep rolling. But everyone in that studio knew they'd just witnessed something significant. A line had been drawn. A boundary had been set. And a 70-year-old country music icon had just taught a masterclass in knowing your worth. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about the album that didn't get promoted. It wasn't about the tour dates that didn't get mentioned. It was about something much more fundamental. It was about refusing to let anyone, no matter their position or platform, treat you as less than you are. And as those studio doors closed behind her, Reba McEntire left behind more than just an unfinished interview. She left behind a moment that would be replayed, discussed, and remembered. Not because of what was said to her, but because of how she responded. With clarity, with strength, with the kind of quiet power that comes from decades of knowing exactly who you are. The morning show set sat in uncomfortable silence. The bright lights that had illuminated what was supposed to be a cheerful conversation now exposed something darker. The comfortable couch that hosted thousands of guests suddenly felt hostile. And the host who'd thought she was being clever found herself facing the consequences of mistaking cruelty for journalism. In that studio, in that moment, everyone learned something. About respect, about dignity, about the difference between asking tough questions and attacking your guest, about how success doesn't give you permission to be unkind, about how experience teaches you when to stay and when to go. Reba's footsteps echoed down the hallway outside. Steady. Sure. The sound of someone who'd made peace with her decision before she'd even stood up. The sound of someone who valued herself too much to accept less than she deserved. Behind her, on that couch, Savannah sat with the realization settling over her like cold water. The interview she'd thought would be memorable for her hard-hitting questions would instead be remembered for something else entirely. For the moment, a legend said enough. For the moment, Grace walked out and left arrogance sitting alone. The studio crew began to move again, slowly, like people waking from a trance. Whispers started. Glances were exchanged. And everyone knew, without saying it out loud, that they'd just been part of something that would be talked about for years to come. Not because of scandal, not because of shock value, but because sometimes, in the middle of what should be ordinary, something extraordinary happens. Someone stands up. Someone speaks truth. Someone shows the rest of us what it looks like to value yourself when someone else clearly doesn't. The commercial break countdown began. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And when the cameras came back on, there was an empty seat where Reba McEntire had been. A space that said more than words ever could. An absence that told the whole story. Because you don't need to stay to make your point. Sometimes leaving is the point. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful statement you can make. Sometimes the interview you don't finish says more than any interview you could complete. And somewhere, beyond those studio walls, Reba McEntire breathed in the fresh air of freedom that comes from choosing yourself, from refusing to be diminished, from understanding that your presence is a gift, and when someone doesn't treat it as such, you're allowed to take it back.